I always thought my life was pretty solid. Good job, decent house, a wife who, for the last 12 years, had been my best friend. We weren't one of those couples who fought all the time or drifted apart because of work or kids. We were in sync. At least, that's what I believed. My name's David, 39, and I've been married to Laura since our mid-20s. We met in college, one of those classic love stories where a guy falls for a girl in his psychology class and spends the entire semester trying to work up the nerve to ask her out. Eventually, I did, and the rest was history. Laura was smart, beautiful, and funny in a way that made me feel lucky every single day. We built a life together, careers, vacations, plans for the future. We didn't have kids, but that was by choice. We both wanted to focus on ourselves first, maybe travel more before settling into the family life. Even after a decade, she still gave me that look sometimes, the one that made me feel like the only man in the world. At least, that's what I thought. Something shifted about 3 months ago. It was small at first, little things I told myself were nothing. She started going to bed earlier than usual, claiming she was exhausted from work. She left her phone face down on the table more often, which wasn't something she used to do. And when she'd get a call, she'd take it in another room. But people get busy. People get tired. I didn't want to be the insecure husband, so I let it go. Then, about a month ago, she started dressing differently. Laura always had great style, but now she was wearing new outfits I hadn't seen before: sleek dresses, expensive heels, lingerie that wasn't for me. The first time I noticed it, I made a joke. Got a new boyfriend at work or something? She laughed it off, called me ridiculous, and kissed me on the cheek. You know I only have eyes for you, babe. And that was enough. At least, for a while. It wasn't until last week that the first real red flag hit me square in the face. She told me she was going out for drinks with some coworkers after work. Not unusual. But when I called her at 10:30 p.m. just to check in, she didn't pick up. An hour later, still nothing. By midnight, I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling, my stomach in knots. She came home at 1:15 a.m. I sat up as soon as I heard the front door click shut. Laura walked in, looking off. Her makeup wasn't smudged, her hair was still perfectly in place, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't place. You okay? I asked. Yeah, just tired, she said, avoiding my gaze. I watched as she slipped off her shoes and headed straight for the shower. She smelled like perfume, one I didn't recognize. That night, I barely slept. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my gut. And once that thought takes hold, it's impossible to shake. The next day, I decided to start paying attention. And what I found out changed everything. The morning after Laura came home late, I woke up before her and just lay there, staring at the ceiling. My mind was racing, my stomach twisted in knots, and no matter how much I wanted to convince myself that everything was fine, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. I listened to her steady breathing beside me, wondering how she could sleep so soundly while I was drowning in doubt. I turned my head slightly and looked at her. She was curled up, facing away from me, her body relaxed as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I got out of bed quietly and walked to the bathroom, closing the door behind me before sitting on the edge of the bathtub. My hands were shaking slightly, which pissed me off because I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband who thought his wife was cheating just because she stayed out late. But it wasn't just last night. It was everything leading up to it, the small changes in her behavior, the distance that had been growing between us, and now, this overwhelming sense that I was missing something huge. I took a deep breath and ran my fingers through my hair, trying to think logically, trying to decide my next move. By the time I walked into the kitchen, Laura was already up, standing by the coffee machine with her phone in her hand. She looked up and gave me a quick smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Morning," she said, her voice light, casual, as if nothing had happened. "Morning," I replied, keeping my expression neutral. I poured myself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, watching her. She was scrolling through her phone, her thumb moving quickly over the screen, and I noticed that she tilted it slightly away from me. A week ago, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but now, every small movement seemed calculated. I set my cup down and crossed my arms. "You got in late last night," I said, keeping my tone even. She barely hesitated before answering. "Yeah, lost track of time. Work stuff, you know how it is." I nodded slowly, studying her face. "Who all was there?" She took a sip of her coffee and glanced at me. "The usual group. Mark, Jenna, some of the newer guys from the office. Nothing exciting." Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. It was too smooth, too rehearsed, as if she had already prepared for this conversation. I decided to push a little harder. "You didn't answer when I called." She shrugged, setting her cup down. Music was loud. I didn't even hear my phone ring. "Sorry about that." I didn't respond right away, just kept my eyes on her, waiting to see if she would look away. She did. That was all I needed. I didn't press further. Instead, I made a mental note of everything she said and filed it away, determined to get real answers. I spent the rest of the morning pretending everything was normal while in reality, I was already forming a plan. I wasn't going to ask her anything else. I wasn't going to accuse her of anything without proof. If something was going on, I needed to be sure before I confronted her. Later that afternoon, while Laura was out running errands, I sat down at my desk with my laptop and pulled up our phone records. I had never done anything like this before, never felt the need to. But now, I had no choice. I scrolled through the list of calls and texts, my eyes scanning for anything unusual. It didn't take long to find it. A number I didn't recognize had appeared repeatedly over the last few months. At first, it was spaced out, one call every couple of weeks, then once a week, then almost every day. The last few weeks, there had been multiple calls a day, including late at night when she had supposedly been too tired to talk to me. I copied the number and pasted it into a search engine, but nothing came up. No business listing, no name attached. I clenched my jaw and exhaled slowly. I needed more than just a number. I needed undeniable proof. The next evening, I told Laura I was going to meet a friend for drinks. She barely reacted, just nodded and said, "Have fun." That was the confirmation I needed. No questions, no curiosity, no hesitation. She didn't care because she had her own plans. I left the house but didn't go far. Instead, I parked a few streets away and waited. It felt ridiculous, sitting there like some amateur detective, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to find out something that would change everything. An hour passed, then another. Just when I started to wonder if I had been wrong, I saw her car pull out of the driveway. My heart pounded as I started my engine and followed her from a distance, keeping my headlights off until I was far enough behind. She drove across town, past the usual spots she would go to with friends, past the restaurants we used to visit together. Eventually, she pulled into a parking lot outside a small hotel. Not a restaurant, not a bar, just a hotel. I watched as she sat in her car for a moment, glancing at her phone before finally stepping out. She wasn't dressed casually like she was going out for errands. She had taken the time to change tight jeans, heels, a top she only wore when she wanted attention. She walked quickly to the entrance, her head down, and disappeared inside without looking back. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I could have gone inside. I could have followed her, confronted her right then and there, demanded to know who she was meeting. But I didn't. I stayed in my car, staring at the hotel entrance, my entire body frozen as the truth settled in. She was cheating on me. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually, I started the car and drove home, my hands shaking the entire way. That night, I lay awake next to her, listening to her steady breathing, knowing exactly where she had been, knowing exactly what she had done. And she had no idea that I knew. I woke up before Laura the next morning, staring at the ceiling, my mind already racing with a million different ways I could handle what I had just learned. Every second that passed fueled the rage building inside me, the kind of anger I had never experienced before. The woman lying next to me, the one who had spent years telling me I was the love of her life, had walked into a hotel the night before, met someone, and then crawled back into our bed like nothing had happened. I thought about waking her up right then and there, shaking her until she admitted the truth, until she had no choice but to say the words out loud. But that wasn't enough. I wanted to see how far she was willing to go with the lies before she cracked. I got out of bed and went through my usual routine, forcing myself to act as normal as possible. When she finally woke up and came into the kitchen, she gave me the same smile she always did, the same little kiss on the cheek, like she hadn't just spent the night with another man. I watched her pour herself a cup of coffee, her phone sitting on the counter right next to her, the same phone she had used to set up whatever secret meeting she thought I didn't know about. "Did you have fun last night?" I asked, my voice steady, giving her no reason to suspect anything. She barely looked up from her coffee. "Yeah, it was nice. Just a couple drinks, nothing crazy." I nodded slowly, taking in every word, every slight hesitation, every micro-expression that crossed her face. "Where did you guys go?" She sipped her coffee, shrugging like it was the most casual question in the world. "Just a bar downtown. Nothing special." I let the silence stretch between us, waiting to see if she would add anything else, waiting to see if she would slip up. When she didn't, I leaned forward slightly, my eyes locked on hers. Funny. I drove by the place you said you were going, but I didn't see your car there. Her hand froze on her coffee cup for half a second before she forced a laugh, shaking her head. Oh, we ended up going somewhere else at the last minute. I should have texted you, but I didn't think it was a big deal. That was it. That was the moment. She had no idea I knew exactly where she had been. No idea that I had followed her to that hotel. No idea that I had been sitting outside in my car, watching the entrance, waiting for her to come out so I could destroy whatever fantasy she thought she was living in. But instead of giving her the satisfaction of an immediate reaction, I took my time, letting her sit with the lie she had just told. You should have, I said finally, my voice low, controlled. Because I know where you actually were. She looked up at me then, her eyes narrowing slightly, her expression shifting into something between confusion and forced innocence. What are you talking about? I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, unlocking it with one swipe before holding it up in front of her face. There, clear as day, was a photo I had taken from my car the night before. A photo of her stepping out of her car, walking into that hotel, dressed up for someone who sure as hell wasn't me. Her face drained of color so fast it was almost impressive. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out at first. Her hand tightened around her coffee cup, her grip so strong I thought she might actually break it. David, she started, her voice barely above a whisper. It's not what it looks like. I let out a short, humorless laugh, shaking my head. Really? Then tell me, Laura, what exactly does it look like? Because to me, it looks like my wife, the woman I spent over a decade building a life with, walked into a hotel while lying to my face about where she was going. So go ahead, explain it to me. She swallowed hard, placing the coffee cup down as carefully as possible, probably stalling for time while she tried to come up with some excuse, some half-baked story that would make me doubt my own eyes. It wasn't like that, she said finally, shaking her head. I wasn't meeting anyone for what you think. I just needed time to think, to clear my head. Stop. I cut her off, my patience wearing dangerously thin. Don't insult me. Don't sit here and pretend that you needed to clear your head in a hotel room when I know damn well that's not what happened. I want the truth, Laura. Right now. Her breathing was uneven, her hands shaking slightly as she ran them through her hair. I had never seen her look like this before, completely cornered. No way out. It took everything in me to keep my voice steady, to keep my hands from shaking with the same fury that was burning through my entire body. Okay, she finally said, her voice breaking slightly. Okay. I messed up, all right? It was stupid. It was a mistake. A mistake. I repeated, my voice rising. A mistake is forgetting to turn off the oven. A mistake is losing your car keys. What you did, Laura, was a choice. A series of choices that led you to cheat on me and then come home like nothing happened. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't falling for it. Not this time. She could cry all she wanted, but it wouldn't change the fact that she had lied to me, that she had thrown everything we had away for some secret rendezvous in a hotel. David, please, she whispered, stepping closer to me, her hands reaching out like she thought she could actually fix this. I love you. I don't know why I did it. I've been feeling lost, and I didn't know how to tell you. I stepped back before she could touch me, shaking my head. You didn't know how to tell me? You had a dozen chances. 100 chances. But instead, you lied to me. You looked me in the eyes, kissed me goodnight, and still chose to betray me. She was crying openly now, but it didn't matter. Nothing she said could erase what she had done. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my hands clenched into fists at my sides, my entire body trembling with the effort of holding myself together. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to look at her one last time, taking in the face of the woman I thought I knew. We're done, Laura, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You don't get to come back from this. And with that, I turned around and walked away, leaving her standing there, broken and shaking, as the reality of what she had done finally sank in. I left the house without looking back, without giving her another second of my time, because she didn't deserve it. I drove aimlessly for a while, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. My mind was running in circles, bouncing between anger and disbelief, between the raw pain of betrayal and the overwhelming need to do something about it. Sitting around and moping wasn't an option. If she thought she could destroy our marriage and walk away with nothing but a few tears and a weak apology, she had no idea who she was dealing with. I parked outside a small diner, staring at my phone, debating my next move. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She had lied to me, humiliated me, and expected me to just accept it. No. She had made her choices, and now I was going to make mine. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. I wasn't interested in dragging this out and playing the game where she begged for another chance and made empty promises about fixing things. I wanted a divorce, and I wanted to make sure she walked away with as little as possible. The lawyer I spoke to was blunt, professional, and after explaining the situation, he assured me that with the evidence I had, things would be in my favor. I scheduled a meeting for the next day and hung up, feeling the first bit of clarity since this nightmare started. But that wasn't enough. I wasn't just going to end things quietly while she got to pretend like she was the victim. She had taken everything we built and thrown it away, so I was going to make sure she felt every ounce of what she had done. I called a friend of mine, Matt, someone who had been through a brutal divorce a couple of years ago and came out on top. He answered on the second ring, his voice casual, unaware of the storm I was bringing into his day. "Hey man, what's up?" "I need your help," I said, my voice flat, controlled. He paused, sensing the weight behind my words. "What happened?" "Laura cheated on me. I caught her. She admitted it." There was silence for a moment before he let out a slow breath. "Jesus. I'm sorry, man. What do you need?" "I need to make sure she regrets it." Matt understood immediately. He had gone through the same thing, had been blindsided by a wife who swore she loved him while sneaking around behind his back. He knew the kind of pain I was feeling, and more importantly, he knew exactly how to make sure Laura didn't walk away from this unscathed. "Meet me at my place in an hour," he said. "We'll figure this out." I drove to his house, my mind racing with possibilities. By the time I got there, Matt was already outside, waiting with a beer in hand, his expression grim. I stepped out of the car, and he handed me the drink without a word. We sat in his backyard, the cool air doing little to calm the fire burning inside me. "You got proof?" he asked finally. I pulled out my phone and showed him the picture of Laura entering the hotel, the phone records, everything I had gathered. He studied them carefully, nodding. "This is solid," he said. "You can bury her in court with this." "That's the plan," I said. "But I want more than that." Matt smirked, taking a sip of his beer. "Oh, I figured. Let's make sure she feels this in every part of her life." We started with social fallout. Laura had always cared about appearances, about the way people saw her. She had built this image of herself as the devoted wife, the successful woman who had it all. I was going to take that away from her. I went through my contacts, picking out mutual friends, family members, people who needed to know the truth. I sent the picture of her at the hotel along with a short message. "I thought you should know what Laura's been up to." One by one, responses started coming in. Shock, anger, disappointment. Her own sister called me, furious, demanding to know if it was true. I told her everything. Her parents, who had always loved me like a son, were devastated. They had no idea their daughter was capable of something like this. One by one, the people in her life started turning on her, realizing that the person they thought they knew was nothing more than a liar and a cheater. But that wasn't enough. Laura and I had a joint bank account, and while I wasn't petty enough to drain it completely, I wasn't about to let her walk away with the upper hand. I transferred half of it into my personal account, securing my share before she could even think about making a move. She had no idea that while she was crying in our house, trying to figure out how to spin this in her favor, I was already 5 steps ahead. Matt and I sat back, watching everything unfold in real time. The messages, the fallout, the sheer destruction of the life she had taken for granted. I should have felt guilty, but I didn't. She had done this to herself. She had chosen to betray me, to lie, to throw everything away for some meaningless fling. The final piece was work. Laura's job was her pride and joy, the one thing she always put above everything else. So, I made sure her boss got the same picture, the same proof of what she had been doing on her so-called work nights. I didn't know if it would cost her the job, but I knew it would at least put a dent in the perfect image she had worked so hard to create. By the time I finally left Matt's house, I felt lighter. Not happy, not content, but no longer weighed down by the helplessness that had consumed me the night before. I had done what I needed to do. I had taken control of the situation, had refused to be the victim in her story. When I got home, she was sitting on the couch, her face pale, her phone in her hands, scrolling through the messages, the fallout. She looked up at me, her eyes wide, filled with something between fear and disbelief. "What did you do?" she whispered. I set my keys down, staring at her, taking in the woman I had once loved, the woman I had once trusted. I made sure you understand what it feels like to lose everything. She opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to beg, but I didn't care anymore. I walked past her, heading to the bedroom, knowing that this was only the beginning. Laura sat there frozen, her phone still in her hand, her breathing uneven as the weight of everything that had happened settled on her. The reality of her choices had finally caught up to her, and there was no way out. I watched as she scrolled through the messages, reading the responses from people who now saw her for what she was. She had spent years building an image of herself as the perfect wife, the one who had everything under control, and now that image was in ruins. She looked up at me, her lips slightly parted, but no words came out. I had seen her angry, seen her frustrated, even seen her cry, but I had never seen her like this, completely lost, like she didn't know where to go from here. "You destroyed me," she whispered finally, her voice barely above a breath. I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. "No, Laura, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure people knew the truth." She wiped at her face, as if trying to keep herself from falling apart, but there was no hiding from this. She had lied, betrayed me, and now she had to deal with the consequences. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms, watching as she struggled to come up with something, anything that would make this go away. But there was nothing she could say that would change what had already been done. "David, please," she said, her voice breaking slightly. I don't know why I did it. I never wanted to hurt you." I clenched my jaw, my fingers curling into fists at my sides. "Then why did you?" She opened her mouth, then shut it again, her shoulders sinking as if even she didn't have a real answer. That was what pissed me off the most. It wasn't just that she had done it, it was that she didn't even have a reason. She had risked everything, thrown away our marriage, and she couldn't even tell me why. "I don't know," she admitted after a long pause, shaking her head. "It just happened." I let out a slow breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "No, Laura, it didn't just happen. You made a choice. You made a series of choices, every single time you texted him, every time you made excuses, every time you left this house knowing exactly what you were doing. You don't just wake up one day and end up in a hotel room with another man." Tears ran down her face, but they meant nothing to me now. She had spent months lying to my face, pretending that everything was fine while sneaking around behind my back. Whatever guilt she felt now was too little, too late. "David, I don't want to lose you," she said, her voice desperate, her hands gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I love you." I laughed again, the sound bitter even to my own ears. "You don't love me. If you did, you wouldn't have done this. You don't get to destroy our marriage and then turn around and act like you care." She shook her head quickly, standing up like she was afraid I was about to walk out the door and never look back. "I do care. I was stupid. I was selfish, but I never stopped loving you." I stared at her for a long moment, taking in every word, every shaky breath, every pathetic attempt to convince me that this was something we could fix. Maybe if I had found out months ago, before I saw her walk into that hotel, before I sat in my car watching the woman I thought I knew turn into a stranger, maybe then I would have wanted to believe her. But that version of me didn't exist anymore. The man who trusted her, who believed in her, who would have done anything to make things work, had died the moment she made her choice. "You don't get to love me now, Laura," I said finally, my voice calm, steady. "You lost that right the second you decided I wasn't enough for you." She let out a small sob, shaking her head like she wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to say. I had spent the last 12 years building a life with her, believing that we were a team, that no matter what, we would always have each other. Now I knew that had been a lie. "I'll do anything," she said suddenly, stepping closer, her hands shaking. "Please, just tell me what I need to do to fix this." I let out a slow breath, my eyes never leaving hers. "You can't fix this. It's over." She stumbled back slightly, as if she hadn't fully accepted what that meant until now. "You don't mean that," she whispered. I took a step toward her, my voice low but firm. "I do." Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. I could see it in her eyes, the way she was trying to process everything, the way she was desperately searching for some way to undo what she had done. But there was no going back. There was no fixing this. "I already talked to a lawyer," I continued, my voice unwavering. "I'm filing for divorce. You'll get the papers soon." Her face crumpled, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks as she shook her head. "David, please. Don't do this. We can go to counseling. We can work through this." I shook my head. "There's nothing to work through. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." She covered her mouth with her hand, her entire body shaking as the reality of the situation finally hit her. I could see the fear in her eyes, the realization that this wasn't just another fight, that this wasn't something she could just apologize for and move past. This was real. This was the end. I turned away, walking toward the bedroom, already knowing that I wouldn't be spending another night under the same roof as her. I'll be staying somewhere else until everything is finalized, I said over my shoulder. You can have the house for now, but don't get too comfortable. We're selling it. She let out another sob, but I didn't turn around. I didn't care anymore. I had wasted enough time, given her enough chances, and all it had gotten me was a broken marriage and a shattered sense of trust. I grabbed a bag, throwing in the essentials, not bothering to pack more than I needed. I just wanted to get out of there, to put as much distance between myself and the woman who had destroyed everything. As I walked toward the door, she stood there watching me, her eyes pleading, her entire body shaking. "David, please," she whispered one last time, but I didn't stop. I opened the door, stepped outside, and closed it behind me, leaving her standing there, broken and alone, exactly the way she deserved to be. I walked out of that house and didn't look back, didn't hesitate, didn't stop to hear if she was still crying. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove. There was no destination in mind, no clear plan other than to put as much distance between myself and Laura as possible. The weight of what had happened sat heavy in my chest, but for the first time since I had discovered the truth, I felt something close to relief. I had made my decision, and there was no going back. She had made hers long before I ever knew, and now she had to live with it. I checked into a hotel, not bothering to unpack, just tossing my bag onto the chair by the window before sitting on the edge of the bed. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, but I ignored it. I knew who it was. Laura had already called me twice since I left, and I had no interest in hearing whatever last-ditch attempt she had to keep me from following through with the divorce. She didn't care when she was sneaking around behind my back, when she was lying to my face, when she was choosing someone else over me. The only reason she cared now was because she was losing. I spent the next few days meeting with my lawyer, making sure every part of the process would move as quickly as possible. There was no reason to drag it out, no reason to entertain the idea that this was anything but over. I had more than enough proof to protect myself legally, enough to ensure that she wouldn't walk away with more than she deserved. The house would be sold, and we would split the profits. There would be no alimony, no long courtroom battles. Just a clean break, exactly the way I wanted it. The hardest part was telling my family. My parents had always liked Laura, had always thought we had the kind of marriage that would last, and breaking the news to them was harder than I expected. My mother, always the one to try and see the best in people, kept asking if I was sure there was no way to fix things, if maybe Laura had just made a mistake. My father, on the other hand, sat in silence for a long time before nodding. "You did the right thing," he finally said. "Some mistakes you can fix. Some you can't. This one? She made her choice, son. You're making yours." That was all I needed to hear. Word spread quickly through our circle of friends, and the reactions were mixed. Some were shocked, some were disgusted with her, and a few had the audacity to act like I was overreacting. The ones who tried to play neutral, the ones who said things like, "Maybe you should hear her out," were the ones I cut off immediately. There was no excuse, no justification, no reason in the world that would ever make what she did acceptable. Laura, on the other hand, wasn't handling it as well. She tried calling, texting, even emailing me at one point. At first, it was the same begging, the same desperate attempts to make me reconsider, to get me to talk to her. When that didn't work, she switched tactics. The anger came next, the accusations that I was being cruel, that I was ruining her life, that I was making things worse than they had to be. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. A week after I left, I got a message from a mutual friend. Laura had tried to talk to them, claiming that I was making her out to be the villain, that people were turning on her because I had told everyone what she did. I stared at the message for a long time before typing out my response. I didn't turn people against her. She did that all on her own. That was the last time I even bothered acknowledging anything she said. The divorce papers were served 2 weeks later. She didn't fight them. She knew better. Whatever image she had of herself, whatever life she thought she was going to have after her affair, it had already crumbled around her. She signed the papers, and just like that, it was over. 12 years, gone in a few signatures. The day I finalized everything, I went back to the house one last time. The moving company had already cleared out what was mine, leaving behind nothing but the empty space where a life once existed. Laura wasn't there, which was probably for the best. I stood in the living room for a few minutes, looking around, feeling nothing. I walked out, locked the door behind me, and didn't look back. Life didn't magically get better overnight. The first few months were rough. There were nights I found myself staring at the ceiling, wondering how I had missed the signs, how I had let myself believe that we were happy when she had been lying to me for so long. There were moments where the anger threatened to take over, moments where I felt like I had wasted too much of my life on someone who never really valued what we had. But those moments passed. I moved into a new apartment, started focusing on myself, on my work, on rebuilding my life without her in it. I went to the gym more, reconnected with old friends, spent time doing things I had put off for years. The weight of what happened never fully disappeared, but it got easier to carry. Then, one night, months later, I got a message from Laura. I almost didn't open it, almost deleted it without a second thought. But curiosity got the better of me. "I'm sorry. I hope you're doing okay." That was it. Nothing else. Just a simple, meaningless apology from someone who no longer had a place in my life. I stared at the message for a long time, my finger hovering over the keyboard, wondering if I should say something, if I should respond, if I should give her even a second of my time. Instead, I deleted it. And just like that, she was gone.